I'm saying bye to all the lies and all the times you cried, saying that I wasn't right, yet I was right by your side. You manipulator, playing games, your friends commentators, and I don't know what you say about our private conversations, but it's got them hating. Thanks to all the rumors you be claiming. It's cool, I'm done with you, so they can throw you a celebration. You gon' hate it when you see me with somebody living better. I'm trying to tell you that me just doing me gon' have you jealous.
I mean, it's just insane. Oh, it's been 3 weeks. Okay, get a grip. I mean, honestly, people have no idea what's involved here. A thorough background investigation must be completed to prove who you are, where you're from, what you're saying is true. That has to take place. There's an administrative process that has to take place. Interviews have to be conducted. Medical screening has to be done. All this stuff takes time. Good day, folks. Today is June 18th, 2024. It's a Wednesday. Welcome back to the program. You're watching a pre-recorded news broadcast because of YouTube censorship. I was falsely accused by YouTube's AI of waving a firearm last night on a live broadcast. My broadcast was terminated, and I appealed it within less than 60 seconds after sending the appeal. It was rejected in my email server. That's an amazingly rapid turnaround time. No one reviewed it, just artificial intelligence, claiming falsely that I waved a firearm on air during a live stream. Didn't happen. So I was not applied a strike. YouTube generously said, well, you probably didn't realize this was a mistake. No, I didn't, because I didn't do it. And they didn't apply a strike. So things should be copacetic. But when I went to live broadcast, live stream not available. So after spending 45 minutes or so with a YouTube person in their chat session, which took a half hour to get to, they determined that, well, yeah, your channel got this video removed because that. And I said, well, okay, that isn't the case, but what now? I don't have a strike, so why can't I broadcast? They said, well, you can't broadcast because you have a cooling off period. I suppose that's like if you have someone going postal, you want them to calm down. But I wasn't angry. I wasn't doing what they claim. And so I said, how long is the cooling off period? It will be removed at a later stage. Well, thank you. Christmas is later. It is June. What is later? So I don't know if it's a 12-hour cooling off period, a 24-hour cooling off period, a 7-day cooling off period. Whatever the case is, I have to bring you the news this way because I'm not blocked on my channel. I have no strikes. I can upload videos. I can do shorts. And that's what I'm doing right now. So today's news is brought to you pre-recorded. So no chance to chat. You just get to hear the news. Perhaps it'll go a little faster without the interaction of the audience. We'll lose a little something from the program, but you'll still get the news in my analysis. So with that, let's get started. President Ramaphosa's office claims there were never any formal talks in the plans at the G7. Last week, he claimed that he would meet with President Trump on the sidelines of the G7 summit. Carolyn Levitt announced all the meetings that Trump had scheduled in Canada. Ramaphosa was never part of that. But yesterday, presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya said there was never a formal plan to meet with Trump. Then why did Ramaphosa double down on that and say that he was meeting with Trump? Yeah, well, now they're trying to parse this and say it was in the context of both of them attending G7. But South Africa wasn't attending G7. They're not a member. They weren't even an invite. Well, Canada apparently invited them. But this is what Ramaphosa had to say. I'm going to have bilaterals with the Chancellor of Germany and the Prime Minister of Canada. And of course, I'll also be meeting President Trump. But of course, you didn't. And you lied to the public. That's an act of omission at a minimum, quite frankly. Well, not a surprise coming from South Africa's president, the man who belittles President Trump. You think Trump wants to meet with this guy? Running around South Africa making jokes. And Natalie, dim the lights. I thought they were pulling a Trump on me. Yeah, getting an office call is going to be very low on the priority list for the Trump administration with behavior of Ramaphosa and all the other events going on. And of course, they're going to take advantage of the fact that Trump left early, saying, well, that's why we didn't get a chance to meet with him, because he had to leave early. No, you never had a meeting. Stop lying. Meanwhile, South Africa continues to lie about the trade talks. There are no trade talks. There are no trade talks. They have not introduced one trade representative. Not a single trade representative is deployed from Cape Town or Pretoria to the United States. And Kabisi Jonas, to our knowledge, still sits in Cape Town. He went to London during this period since he's been named as a special envoy. But there's no ambassador. There's no trade representative. There's no special envoy. The United States gave countries 90 days to work out bilateral deals. It took 2.5 months for the United Kingdom and the United States to reach a deal. The closest of allies. 2.5 months. They just signed the deal at the G7. Where do you think South Africa ranks in that priority of relations with countries? Our closest ally historically, the United Kingdom, 2.5 months to work out a deal. South Africa, with no one talking about this, is going to see themselves slapped on July 9th with a 31% tariff, which will eviscerate the economy. Absolutely eviscerate the economy. No way police can lead the fight against gender-based violence. So says Police Commissioner Senzo Mkuno. And to which I have to say, I don't disagree with the gentleman. It's not the responsibility of the police to stop South Africans from beating, assaulting other South Africans. That is a responsibility of the community, of the family. And because so many people are born in single-parent families and the moral decay and collapse of South African society, gender-based violence is unfortunately the norm for many South Africans. Mkuno said there's no way SAPS can lead the fight against gender-based violence. That's one view we are discouraging from within SAPS to portray themselves as the fight against GBV. It's not true and it's impractical. I do agree. Society, he says wider society, and I've been calling that for a long time, so it's good to see him using his head here. But leader of the African Christian Democratic Party, Reverend Kenneth Mshwe, acknowledged the role of other sectors, but said the police must shoulder a central role. He said, I agree there are other stakeholders that have to be involved in attempting to reduce it. But whenever there's violence, no matter what kind, the police must take responsibility to ensure safety and security. They must make sure those men who are violent are arrested. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but that's not the major issue here, Dr. Mshwe. The major issue here is the prosecution of those accused, arrested, charged with gender-based violence. Meanwhile, Floyd Shivambu appears to be on the out. He had a media briefing. Is this a prelude to his resignation from the MK party? This one coming from the independent line. After his humiliating axing from his powerful position as Umkhonto we Sizwe Party Secretary General just a few weeks ago after his idiotic trip to Malawi to visit a minister on the run, Shivambu is set to announce his resignation, according to the IOL. His spokesperson, Nolubolalola Mkina, a former EFF MP who joined him, has confirmed that Shivambu will hold a media briefing Thursday in Midrand, but refused to discuss what he plans to do. So, will he be resigning? Well, the former Secretary General may not be around very long for the MK party. But then who does stay with the MK party very long? It's usually a weekend gig. Well, there's nothing to see here, folks. There's no race-based legislation. There's no racial discrimination against South Africans. It's perfectly okay to offer a tourism relief fund only to black South Africans, denying white, Indian, and colored South Africans any access to the money, even though it's unconstitutional, upheld by the North Gauteng High Court, and then overturned by the Supreme Court of Appeal after all the money was gone during COVID. But here's the latest. White South Africans are barred from registering with Youth Employment Service. Youth Employment Service says it's just acting in accordance with the government's BBBEE codes of good practice. Good practice? Racial discrimination is not good practice. It's morally reprehensible. Yes, Youth Employment Service for Youth is a job creation program involving collaboration between government and labor and is aimed at battling South Africa's dismally high unemployment rate for youth. According to yesforyouth.co.za, the nonprofit organization is helping to create 1 million work opportunities. What are work opportunities? That's a stupid misnomer. That's not a job. The program is endorsed by the government's National Development Plan, which aims to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality in the next 12 years. Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen. Yes for Youth confirms its passionate commitment to BBBEE policies, which are aimed at attracting investors looking for associated benefits and creating employment opportunities for Black South Africans. It's a business-driven initiative to build economic pathways for Black youth. Black youth. You have to answer a questionnaire. Are you Black, colored, or Indian? And it doesn't let you go any further. So you must be Black, you must be between the age 18 and 34, and you must be a South African citizen. This is racism on steroids. So it isn't even a quota. It isn't even some Black South Africans, some South Africans. It's all whites are excluded. Oh, but there's nothing to see here, says Cyril Ramaphosa as he lies in the Oval Office. President Ramaphosa has appointed Minister 30% Anzi Motshekga, the failed education minister, the failed defense minister, is the acting president. I find it comical the South African president can just pick whoever he wants to be acting in his stead. So while he's at the G7, she is the acting president because Paul Mashatile is in Russia. This is the same woman who sat at Bloemspruit Airfield in Bloemfontein while the troops returning from the Congo were flown to Waterkloof, hours away. Yeah, nobody can pick up a mobile phone and tell people about that. Gift of the Givers, the charity, says that they are being intimidated by water mafia during the flood relief efforts in the Eastern Cape. Speaking to the Independent Line, Dr. Imitez Suleiman, founder and chairman of Gift of the Givers, said members of the water mafia have been trying to intimidate its drivers while delivering life-saving water to the people of Mthatha, who've been severely affected by the floods. Given the hardships and difficulties of the people and the fact that 90 people have passed on, the behavior of the water mafia is totally disgusting. We appreciate the fact that SAPS act immediately by sending out a convoy. with our water tankers. The situation has completely calmed down. However, we're calling the community to locate a black Toyota Fortuner. It's the Fortuner from which the threat was made. This person needs to be arrested. Water mafia. There's mafia for everything in South Africa. Likone Fossi's alleged killer was on parole after serving just 9 years of an 18-year sentence. You see, prison in South Africa is not for rehabilitation. It's also not for punishment. It's just a place to hide killers, rapists, and pedos until you kick them out because there's no place to keep them in prison. Umduduzi Mnisi, the man accused of killing Likona Fosa, a 14-year-old, was previously in prison for attempted murder. He was sentenced 18 years for attempted murder, but served only 9 before he was released on parole. He was out on parole when he was arrested last week for the murder and mutilation of the 14-year-old girl. What kind of deterrent to crime is this? It's not a deterrent. His sentence was 12 years for robbery and 6 years for attempted murder, which totals 18. He served 9 years and was placed on parole on December 12, 2018, and it was going to expire on April 21st, 2027. And now he's accused of murdering and mutilating a 14-year-old girl. Gate McKenzie hints at cash bonuses for the Proteas after their major victory, and Temba Mavumba's men get heroes welcome when they come home. Sports Minister Gate McKenzie said the Proteas are set for big bonuses following their historic victory in the ICC World Test Championship final, beating Australia by 5 wickets at the final at Lord's this past Saturday. First title South Africa's won in cricket since 1998. Now, why is the government paying bonuses to athletes in the private sector? Why is the government involved with the Proteas or the Springboks? They shouldn't be. These should be private activities. The U.S. government has nothing to do with USA Eagles. Nothing. It's a private, not-for-profit organization. Or maybe it's for profit, who knows. But it's a private organization. Government should not be paying athletes. That's coming out of the taxpayer's pocket. Why should they get paid for doing their job? It's their job to bring championships. And it's not the taxpayer's job to pay them for success. You pay them with ticket sales, buying merchandise. Socialists. Gate McKenzie, stop giving money to athletes. Kenya police shoot a bystander at close range during the latest protest. Protesters clashed with police and armed men in Nairobi after a bystander shot, demanding justice and resignations. Not good, folks. Security forces and hundreds of men armed with whips and clubs clashed with protesters in Kenya, the police officer having shot an unarmed bystander, triggering widespread anger. Tensions were already high as it marked a year since the massive Gen Z-led protest over the state of the economy last year. Nairobi Central Business District, the epicenter of last year's demonstrations, there were small groups of protesters gathered on Tuesday, initially peacefully, to call for an end to police brutality. But they quickly saw escalation. The Kenyan deputy police chief has resigned amid an investigation into the death of a blogger in police custody. This is another one. A Kenyan deputy police chief has resigned amid an investigation into the death of a blogger in police custody. Deputy Inspector General Eliud Lagat said on Monday he was stepping down as investigations continued into the death of Albert Ojwang. He was found dead in his cell after being arrested over social media posts accusing Lagat of corruption. His death sparked protests, and now we've had someone shot in the head to that protest. On June 6th, Ojwang was arrested for publishing false information on social media. He was then transported 400 kilometers to Nairobi. 2 days later, he was found dead in Central Police Station. Police claim that he died after hitting his head against a cell wall. I'm sure his head was hit against a cell wall, but I doubt that it was because he fell. At least 60 people feared dead after shipwrecks off the coast of Libya. Illegal criminal aliens trying to invade Europe continue to die in large numbers. United Nations International Organization of Migration says 743 people have died thus far this year trying to cross the Mediterranean to Europe. At least 60 refugees and migrants, at least 60 criminal alien invaders are feared missing and drowned at sea after 2 shipwrecks off the coast of Libya. With dozens feared dead and entire families left in anguish, the IOM is once again urging the international community to scale up its search and rescue operations, guarantee safe, predictable disembarkment for survivors. No, let's put safe, predictable interdiction and turn these ramshackle boats back to the coast of North Africa and let these people stay there. They have no business going across the Mediterranean. IHG, the International Hotel Group, which includes, of course, Holiday Inn, their hotels and resorts will boost their African hospitality portfolio with 35 new hotel openings. The Intercontinental Table Bay in Cape Town is one of their leading brands. IHG expects milestone hotel openings this year across Egypt, Morocco, and South Africa, including the Voca Cairo Arabella Plaza and the iconic Intercontinental Table Bay in Cape Town, as I mentioned. So they're spreading the portfolio. Someone has hope for Africa, IHG. Supreme Leader of Iran says Iran will not surrender as Israel hits more nuclear sites. The United Nations nuclear watchdog confirmed that Israeli airstrikes have targeted 2 sites where centrifuges linked to Iran's nuclear program were manufactured. Europe is open to negotiating with Iran, says the German foreign minister. Johann Vadapul said that Europe is open to negotiating with Iran. Iran must act urgently. It's never too late to come to the negotiating table if one comes with sincere intentions. Well, you are a juvenile child, Johann Vadapul, if you think that Iran has genuine intentions. The only genuine intentions they have is to blow up the world. Iran's supreme leader also threatens irreparable damage if the United States joins the conflict. The Ayatollah Ali Khamenei rejected Trump's call for an unconditional surrender amid signs the United States was weighing whether to join Israel's bombardment of Iran. Intelligent people who know Iran, the nation, and the history of Iran will never speak to this nation in the language of threats because the Iranian nation cannot be surrendered. The Americans should know that any U.S. military intervention will undoubtedly be accompanied by irreparable damage. So my question to the lunatic is, intelligent people who know Iran, the nation, and history will never speak this nation in the language of threats. So why do you speak to the United States and Americans in the language of threats, threatening to kill us and murder us all the time? And now the first threat directed at you, and you cry like little babies? Mm-hmm. A cargo flight that some of my viewers mentioned being diverted from China towards Iran. Well, Cargo Lux denied the aircraft even entered Iranian airspace, but nonetheless, its flight path was on. A cargo flight operated by Cargo Lux, a Luxembourg-based airline partially owned by a Chinese company, appeared to divert from its scheduled route from China to Luxembourg and instead headed towards Iran, prompting speculation about a possible air bridge between Beijing and Tehran amid heated tensions in the Middle East. Flight CV9736, operated by Cargolux Airlines International, departed Zhengzhou on the 15th of June with Luxembourg as its stated destination, according to data from Flight Radar 24. However, flight tracking records indicate the aircraft veered sharply towards Iranian airspace before disappearing from public radar after switching off its transponder over Turkmenistan. Additional data from Flight Aware suggests the aircraft made a stop in Turkmenbashi, Turkmenistan, before proceeding to Luxembourg. They denied the aircraft entered Iranian airspace, issuing a statement in response to growing online speculation the flight was part of a covert delivery operation involving China and Iran. Blame the reports on incorrect data from public flight tracking platforms. We're aware of recent information statements circulating on social media. Well, why did you turn off your transponder? Why did you turn that off? If you have nothing to hide, you wouldn't have turned off a transponder. And why did you divert your route over Turkmenistan? Something very fishy going on here. Are the Chinese supplying the Iranians with missiles? With technology? Who knows? Taking a look at the conflict in Iran thus far, here's a map of Israeli strikes since the 13th of June. And you can see the red strikes, red circles are where they've hit, and the the black circles are known nuclear facilities. You can see a lot of them haven't been touched yet. Iran, for a country that's a country of peace, that's a lie, has an awful lot of nuclear weapons development sites, doesn't it? Here's a map of where Iran has struck in retaliation at Israel, striking several locations near Haifa and Tel Aviv. Dozens of Bali flights are canceled after Indonesia volcano erupts. Mount Lewatobi Laki on the island of Flores discharged an 11-kilometer high column of ash on Tuesday. Good Lord. Dozens of flights to and from Indonesia's resort island Bali have been canceled after this volcanic eruption. No doubt, because your plane is going to crash if it goes through that ash. Mount Lewatobi Laki erupted late Tuesday, sending a 6.84-mile column of ash into the sky. Residents and tourists should avoid activities within 7 kilometers of the volcano's crater. I'd go a lot further away if I were you. Boeing 787 emergency power system likely was active before that Air India crash. Accident investigators examined whether Ram Air turbines operation indicated trouble with engines, hydraulics, or other components. Preliminary finding, according to people familiar with the probe, gives investigators a new line of inquiry as they study a crash that killed all but one of the plane's passengers. In all, at least 270 people died following the crash, including some on the ground in the western Indian city of Ahmedabad. The emergency system is known as a Ram Air turbine. It's a small propeller that drops from the bottom of the 787 fuselage to serve as a backup generator. Engines normally produce electricity for an aircraft to help run its flight control systems. The power generated by the RAT can enable crucial aircraft components to function. Now, that system can deploy automatically in flight if both engines have failed or if all 3 hydraulic system pressures are low. The Pentagon is reviewing its submarines, and it's rattling the Australians. Pentagon review rattles submarine deal amid fears of China's naval edge. The pact to sell Australia's nuclear submarines is imperiled by Trump's administration concerned that the U.S. is not producing enough of its own submarines. A senior U.S. defense official said the Pentagon is reviewing the Biden-era AUKUS agreement, that's Australia, UK, US, to ensure that it's aligned with the president's America First agenda and that allies step up fully to do their part in collective defense. Well, China's naval fleet now outnumbers that of the United States with more than 370 vessels. Still, China lags behind the U.S. in overall vessel tonnage and technological sophistication, including its undersea fleet, with just 12 nuclear-powered submarines compared to more than 65 operated by the U.S. Navy. I recently said 45. I was off. It's 65. Battery makers are sweating it out after antimony stocks have dwindled after China curbed exports. China, trying to dominate the world, pretending that they're a good actor, has banned the export of antimony. 60% of antimony is produced by the Chinese. It's a critical component in lead-acid batteries. For the world's makers of lead-acid batteries, China's restrictions on critical mineral antimony that were put in place late last year have become a major headache, one that their customers now also have to face sky-high procurement costs that get passed on. China, as I said, produces 60% of annual antimony production. Overall, antimony demand is 230,000, 240,000 tons a year, with lead-acid batteries accounting for a third of that. Meanwhile, China is aiming for the dollar, making a bid for their useless currency to be traded, saying that no country should dominate. Well, that's exactly what China would like to do. See what they're doing with rare earth elements and things like antimony. The governor of China's central bank outlined a plan on Wednesday for a global financial system that relies on several major currencies, not just the dollar. Pan Gongsheng, the governor of the People's Bank of China, did not mention the dollar by name, but gave an extended critique of the potential dangers of international reliance on a single country's currency. Well, the world doesn't rely solely on the dollar. They also rely on the euro. Pope Leo takes on artificial intelligence, and after what happened to me last night, I like where he's going with this. 2 days into his reign, the new American Pope spoke softly to a hall full of red-capped cardinals and invoked the digital age challenge to human dignity he intended to address with the power of his 2,000-year-old office, artificial intelligence. Today, the church offers a trove of social teaching to respond to another industrial revolution and innovations in the field of artificial intelligence that pose challenges to human dignity, justice, and labor, he told the College of Cardinals. A traitor or hero? A statue of George Washington in Trafalgar Square? Yes, it was a gift from the Commonwealth of Virginia 100 years ago, but it was recently away for restoration, I should say. A long-dead American president creates a hubbub when he pops up in the British Capitol, and a crowd quickly gathered on a June morning to watch the tall, colonial-clad figure moving across Trafalgar Square. Is that George Washington? What's he doing here? Well, he was a gift from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Interesting to see George Washington in Trafalgar Square. Now, the sculpture was sent in 1914 by the Commonwealth of Virginia, a gift from the former colony to a former colonizer, to mark a 100-year anniversary of the Treaty of Ghent, which formally ended decades of conflict between the United States and the United Kingdom after the War of 1812. The G7 talks end in Canada. Ukraine walks away with nothing. President Zelensky had hoped to secure more support from the G7, but the crisis in the Middle East was seen as more urgent priority. Indeed, it is. Zelensky gets nothing. As Russia was unleashing its deadliest attack in Ukraine's capital in nearly a year, President Zelensky arrived in the Canadian Rocky Mountains hoping to meet with President Trump. Instead, Trump left the Global Power Summit early, canceled his meeting with Zelensky, lamented Russia's absence from the leaders' get-together, and rejected the idea of issuing a joint statement in support of Ukraine. Denmark suddenly is interested in Greenland, a territory they've long neglected and abused. Denmark will invest more in Greenland as Trump's demand for U.S. annexation remains locally unpopular. Denmark's prime minister said her country is willing to provide Greenland with more autonomy and investment as the Arctic island nation faces annexation offers from the United States. Joined by Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen at a press conference on Tuesday on Denmark's Faroe Islands, another colonial possession, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said her country looks forward to increased cooperation between the two nations. We're willing to invest more in the development of the Greenlandic society. This could be ports, and it could be another type of critical infrastructure that has both defense and military perspective, but which can be used, for example, in relation to tourism or raw minerals extraction. Interesting that suddenly the Danes care about Greenland. They don't even have a plan. It could be this, it could be that. They don't even know. They're just throwing stuff on the wall to detract from their negligence in Greenland. Meanwhile, the Pentagon is shaking things up in the Unified Command Plan, moving Greenland geographically from European command responsibility to the Northern Command, which includes the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and part of the Caribbean Basin. Pentagon has redrawing its military combatant command responsible lanes for defending U.S. homeland to include Greenland, as the Trump administration signals it wants control of the Danish territory. The adjustment will shift responsibility for Greenland from European Command to Northern Command. And we get a review of the Unified Command Plan every year. This is one change. The European Union lays out a plan to bolster the defense industry. The trade bloc wants to ramp up the defense, but they've been using social scores. Do you believe that? The European Commission, the EU's executive arm, on Tuesday proposed a number of changes and clarifications to existing regulations, including encouraging merger watchdogs to look favorably on defense sector deals and signaling to asset managers that some security investments could still be considered environmental, social, and governance financing. So environmental, social, and governance financing is the basis for awarding defense contracts to develop weaponry to protect your nation. These people are idiots. Lawmakers vote to decriminalize abortions for women in England and Wales. The landmark decision will prevent women from being criminally prosecuted for ending their pregnancies. British lawmakers vote on Tuesday to prevent women from being prosecuted for having an abortion in England and Wales, a landmark decision that sets the country on a diverging path from the United States. In effect, the vote will largely decriminalize terminating pregnancies that are later than 24 weeks. So now you can abort a child up to birth? Britain's parliament, by a vote of 370 to 137, approved an amendment to the bill that would change Victorian-era laws governing abortion. They're saying an abortion after 24 weeks will be allowed only if there's a risk to the mother's life or a grave permanent injury to her health, and there's substantial risk of serious fetal anomaly. How many corrupt doctors will sign off on that and lie about that? Probably plenty, I would suspect. They've had abortion since 1967. Initially, it was at 28 weeks, reduced to 24 weeks in 1990, but now you can kill a child past 24 weeks. Appeals court has apparently been receptive to Trump's Los Angeles troop deployment with the National Guard. Federal appeals court judges seemed inclined to bless President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard to quell Los Angeles riots over the objections of Governor Gavin Newsom. During oral argument on Tuesday, a three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit, that's not a friendly court, questioned the reasoning behind the lower court decision that ruled Trump violated the law and the Constitution in federalizing sending troops to the city. They wondered what role the courts can play in reviewing Trump's decision and cast doubt on California's argument that he needed to get Newsom's consent before federalizing troops. And that's correct. He doesn't need a consent. Jennifer Sung, the judge, a Biden appointee, said there is longstanding Supreme Court precedent that gives the president broad discretion in decisions to call out the Guard. It seemingly rejected the exact argument you're making, she told Samuel Thomas Harbord, California's lawyer. Congress was essentially giving the president the authority, the exclusive authority, to determine the exigency existed. Two other judges, Mark Bennett and Eric Miller, are both Trump appointees to the Ninth Circuit. So it doesn't look like it's going to go well for California. Trump touts the total control of Iranian airspace, says the U.S. knows where the Ayatollah is hiding. This was Truth Social post. And we know complete control of Iranian airspace now, and the U.S. knows exactly where the Ayatollah is hiding. Scary stuff for the Ayatollah. Mayor Karen Bass, who flamed insurrection in Los Angeles, has lifted the curfew in downtown Los Angeles, a 10-hour curfew. Began last Tuesday when federal agents were targeted by insurrectionists. Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles lifted the nighttime curfew she imposed last week. Lifting the curfew was the latest sign that clashes between protesters and officers are dying down. And the New York Times lies in this article. The early computation saw federal agents shooting into crowds of protesters with crowd control munitions. No, those weren't federal agents. That was Los Angeles police. There were no federal agents deployed initially, just ICE agents. Los Angeles District Attorney announced his charge against 30 people over the anti-ICE protests, including assaulting police officers using destructive device to cause injury and looting. Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman said on June 17th that charges have been filed against 30 people. Hochman said William Rubio, 23, was among those charged. Rubio faces 2 felony counts, assault on a police officer and use of a destructive device to injure or destroy after allegedly throwing fireworks at officers during the demonstrations. The FBI intelligence links China to alleged interference in the 2020 election. Report on China-made U.S. driver's license has been sent to the Senate. The FBI uncovered documents alleging China was linked to the production of fraudulent driver's licenses that were used for fake mail-in ballots supporting presidential candidate Joseph Biden in the 2020 election. In a late Monday post on X, Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, said recently uncovered FBI documents detailing alarming allegations, including interference. Recently uncovered. So the FBI knew about this since 2020, and they hid it. They hid it under the corrupt Biden regime. President Trump has long claimed the election was rigged. Patel posted a link to a news report that said the FBI intelligence report had raised concerns that Beijing mass-produced fake American driver's license to skew the results with phony mail-in ballots backing Mr. Biden. The document alleges serious national security concerns that need to be fully investigated by the FBI. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Not really. While they rail on about Macedonian server farms and make false claims about Russia influencing the 2016 election, look what happens in 2020. An additional 2,000 National Guard troops are now being deployed to Los Angeles, according to the Pentagon. 2,000 additional California Army National Guard soldiers requested by President Trump have now been activated in Los Angeles. They'll support the protection of federal functions, personnel, and property in the greater Los Angeles area. Troops of the 49th Military Police Brigade will join 2,100 National Guard from the 79th Infantry Brigade Combat Team and the 700 Marines from the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment already deployed. They form Task Force 51, commanded by Major General Scott Sherman. President Trump has ordered leads to investigate 33 potential incidents of non-citizen voting, according to Attorney General Paxton in Texas. An executive order of President Trump opened up records that led to the identification of more than 24 instances where non-citizens may have illegally voted in the 2024 election. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton had a statement on Tuesday, said 33 cases of potential illegal voting were referred to his office by the Texas Secretary of State, Jane Nelson. Vindicated? Kash Patel's FBI uncovers a apparent Chinese communist plot to rig the 2020 mail-in vote for Biden, as I mentioned a short while ago. Election officials, Democrats, and liberal media were quick to suggest claims by Trump back then were unfounded and were preposterous. But on Monday, Kash Patel revealed what the FBI had known all along. Nearly as damning as the allegations was the alleged cover-up by elements of the intelligence community ahead of the election. Patel told Just the News that the newly declassified documents include allegations of plans from the Chinese Communist Party to manufacture fake driver's license and ship to the United States for the purpose of facilitating fraudulent mail-in ballots. Allegations which, while substantiated, were abruptly recalled and never disclosed to the public. U.S. Customs and Border Protection announced on July 27, 2020, that between January 1st and June 30th that year, CBP officers at International Mail Facility in Chicago had seized 1,513 shipments containing fraudulent documents, including 19,888 counterfeit U.S. driver's licenses. Those are the ones they caught. The majority of the shipments were arriving from China and Hong Kong, with other seized shipments arriving from Great Britain and South Korea. It's unclear whether some of these hundreds of thousands of Chinese students at universities across the country or the nearly 400,000 Chinese illegal aliens in the country were the intended recipients of these fake licenses. Brad Lander is the latest demon rat arrested for acting like a fool at an immigration courthouse. Mr. Lander, New York City comptroller and a candidate for mayor, was handcuffed as he tried to steer a man past immigration and customs enforcement officers. He was observing proceedings at the city's main immigration courthouse at 26 Federal Plaza, where an increasing number of migrants, illegal aliens, appear for court have been arrested recent weeks by immigration and customs enforcement agents. Spokesman for the Department of Homeland Security later said Mr. Lander had assaulted and impeded a law enforcement officer, though as of Tuesday, there were no charges filed. He repeatedly asked the agents whether they have judicial warrant, refusing to let go of a migrant as the agents sought to shepherd the man towards the elevators, according to one of the videos. I will let go when you show me the judicial warrant. You don't have the authority to arrest U.S. citizens. I'm not obstructing. I'm standing right here in the hallway. I asked to see the judicial warrant. Well, you can ask all you want. You have no business there, and you're impeding law enforcement. So charge him. Industry leaders are pleading with White House for relief from raids. Calls for a reprieve come after the Trump administration reversed a pause on immigration actions at farms, meatpacking plants, hotels, and restaurants. Oh, no. Yeah. Lobbying efforts from farms, hotels, and restaurants, as well as meatpacking, construction, manufacturing, retail, elder care, and dairy industries, trying to get the president not to ship out illegal aliens. Well, this is what you get when you hire criminals, and you should all be charged. The group estimates 75% of its workforce is foreign-born, mostly from Latin America. Well, there's nothing wrong with being foreign-born. There's something wrong with being illegal. There's a big difference between foreign-born and illegal. And Trump administration has conflicting messages on this workplace raid, leaving some businesses confused. Trump officials insist the president is fully committed to mass deportation, but they've been careful not to directly contradict the president's attempt to offer a reprieve to certain businesses. Well, none of them deserve reprieve. They're criminals for hiring criminals. Blue-collar wages under President Trump post the largest increase in almost 60 years. Wage numbers are even bigger than the improvement seen at the start of his first term. In the first 5 months of President Trump's second term, blue-collar hourly workers have experienced a nearly 2% increase in their real wage growth over inflation, the most significant growth under any administration since President Richard Milhous Nixon. New Treasury Department data suggests real inflation-adjusted hourly wages growth is up 1.7% year-to-date for production and non-supervisory workers. By comparison, real wages declined 1.7% during the first 12 months of the previous administration, despite their claims of Bidenomics. People's pockets shrank. The last time wages outpaced inflation at this pace was during the president's first term. Data confirmed what we saw during President Trump's first administration. Pro-growth policies like tax reform and deregulation had a measurable impact on real wages, especially for blue-collar workers. Wow. Other presidents have reported negative growth over the past 6 decades. Reagan, minus 0.9. George Bush, negative 3%. Bill Clinton, negative 0.6. George Bush, negative 0.6. And Barack Obama, negative 0.3. Hourly wage growth was flat under Jimmy Carter. So, things are getting better under Trump, but no one's reporting that. President Trump has extended the TikTok sale deadline for the third time. President Trump will extend a June 19th deadline for China-based ByteDance to divest of their assets for another 90 days, despite a law that mandated the sale or shutdown, absent significant progress. He's twice granted a reprieve and does it again. President Trump does not want TikTok to go dark, just want it sold to Americans. Howard Lutnick says nearly 70,000 people have signed up for the $5 million Trump card investor visa. This plan would offer legal residency to wealthy individuals who pay a $5 million fee. Nearly 70,000 people signed up for it. Jeez, how many of them are coming from Saudi Arabia? Lutnick suggests the Trump card could eventually replace the existing EB-5 immigrant investor program, which allows foreigners to apply for a green card by investing at least $1.05 million or 800,000 in designated high unemployment areas. The conflict in the Middle East causing rancor within the Make America Great Again ranks. Should Trump stay in the fight or stay out of the fight? People in the MAGA crowd conflicted feelings. The prospect that President Trump may order an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities has torn a rift among leaders of his political base, a coalition partly forged by Trump's opposition to previous wars. NVIDIA could become a nearly $5 trillion company. Barclays analysts raised their price target to $200 a share, highlighting greater optimism about Blackwell and the company's earnings potential. NVIDIA stock could rise another 38% according to Barclays. That would translate into a $4.9 trillion market capitalization. One company bigger than all of South Africa's economy by a factor of like 10. That's insane. JetBlue stock is losing altitude as travel slowdown hits the airline. JetBlue Airways stock dropped 8% on Tuesday after Chief Executive Johanna Garrity said the carrier's path into profitability will be longer than expected due to decline in travel. And Caitlin Clark, a night of skirmishes in the WNBA, a product out of control. Indeed, the officiating is atrocious in the WNBA, and the racist physical muggings and assaults that take place against Caitlin Clark occurred again last night. Maybe not racist in this case, maybe just raised temperatures, but clearly racist attacks against her have happened in the first season. It's just a matter of time before the star of the NBA is injured as a consequence of this thuggish behavior. Last night, Indiana Fever players and the Sun players were both at fault for these attacks. Stupidity. These women need to grow up, and the WNBA needs to get genuine officiating before this thing gets any further out of control. And that's the news for today, the 18th of June, 2025. Thank you for your patience and sticking with us as we give you a recorded news broadcast. If and when the live streaming features returned, we'll go back to that. God bless.